I've decided to stop working and retire. I'm 47 years old, so I found out back in June that I was getting made redundant along with most of my team. The company's in financial trouble, so it's decided to save money by outsourcing all our jobs over to India. So I've got about 2 weeks left in work now. The jobs market is pretty bad at the moment, and it's been pretty bad since we had a change of government. So I've kind of hit a brick wall on the job hunting front. The same goes for most of my colleagues. Most of them are struggling to get a job at the moment. It's just that the market is really bad. So all that aside, I've decided to give retirement a go. In this video, I just want to explain how I came to that decision and how I'm able to retire so early. So I could probably easily carry on working for another 20 years if I really wanted to. I've been doing this now since my early 20s. I come from a very poor working class family, so my parents were both working class. My dad and my mum did manual labour. We pretty much lived on the breadline for years, and there were long periods where my parents were out of work. They couldn't find work for whatever reason. I think that was fairly common in England in the 70s. So that upbringing and seeing my parents struggling financially, that had a really big impact on my thinking. And I always thought that when I grow up, I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to be able to have enough money to do all the things that I wanted to do, and I didn't want to have to work all the time. So I started becoming interested in saving money from a very early age. I always used to save whatever pocket money I had. If I earned any money, I would save that or put that away. My family used to laugh at me. They used to call me tight. And I think that living through essentially what was poverty set my mindset, and I became a big saver rather than a spender. So it gave me a saving and investing mindset, which is one of the reasons I'm able to retire so early. I was already reading financial books in my teens, and in my early 20s I read a book that had quite a profound impact on me. That book is called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you've got any kind of financial interest, you'll have almost certainly read this book. Most people have heard of it. It was a bestseller for years, sold something like 35 million copies. It's one of the best financial books that you can ever read. The advice in it is still pretty relevant today. I'd encourage you to get a copy of that book if you've got any interest in finance and you've never read it. That book taught me the difference between assets and liabilities, and that's something that most people don't really understand. Another thing that book taught me is that it's not enough just to save money. You have to take some risks with your money. All my family and friends used to say the only way to get on really and get by in life was to work hard, work long hours, know your place, doff your cap to the governor, that kind of stuff. They all had the mindset that people like us, working class people, were destined to work forever. We'd never be wealthy, we'd never be able to retire early, we'd always owe everything out to other people. It always felt crazy to me that you had to work all your life in back-breaking manual labour jobs and just continue to be poor and basically just get by on the very basics. Those ideas never resonated with me, they just didn't make sense. So I always thought differently to friends and family. As a result of that, I didn't really have many friends when I grew up, to be honest. Most of our friends wanted to watch football and just drink, go to the match and stuff like that, and just mess around. I was more interested in investing and financial stuff. So in my early 20s, I started to invest my wages. I started to read lots and lots of different financial books, and I started to get an idea of how people break out of what you call generational poverty or intergenerational poverty. I always wanted to become the person in my family that broke out of that generational poverty. So what I've been doing for the last 25 years is living on a fairly basic salary. So as I already mentioned, I'm in software, so I'm in tech. I was investing a huge chunk of my wages every month into what you call assets. And assets are essentially things that grow over time. So assets could be property or real estate. They could be stocks. They could be things like index funds, even savings to a degree. Even if you save your money, you put it in a high interest bank account, that's an asset as well because it's generating money. And what you're doing essentially is you're building up these assets during your lifetime, and eventually you get to a point where the assets are all paying out so much money that you're able to say, well, you know what, I've had enough of this, I don't want to work anymore, for whatever reasons. As I say, my reason is because I'm getting made redundant again. This will be the second time in my career that I've been made redundant, and I'm thinking, well, you know what, I've got enough assets now to live on. I can live off the income from my assets, and I'm thinking to myself, well, why would I bother working for another 20 years? I'm in good health. Why can't I spend my next sort of 20 years when most of my colleagues will still be working? Why can't I spend that time doing things that I want to do? And I can use my assets to fund that lifestyle. So I was putting my money into company pensions where they were available. I was using salary sacrifice schemes to increase my pension contributions where I could. I was investing money into the stock market for a very long period as well. I was specifically interested in buying things like dividend stocks and index funds, and I would receive dividend income, and what I could do, I could immediately reinvest that dividend income. So those type of investments really interested me, and I've been buying those for years and years and years. I also bought my first property when I was pretty young. I taught myself DIY skills and I renovated my first property, lived in it for a while, and I did it up to a high standard, and then I sold on the property. And what I did, instead of kind of going out and spending that money, I used the money I'd made from my renovations to put into another property, and I bought a bigger property which was also run down, and then I moved into that property for a while. I renovated that, did that up, and then I sold that for a much higher price. So I did this quite a few times. So essentially I was almost flipping properties, but I wasn't doing it in the conventional sense where business people buy a property, they don't live in it, they flip it and they pay tax on it. What I was doing, I was buying the properties, I was moving into the properties, and I was renovating the properties while I lived in them. And the advantage of that is you're not paying any tax when you sell it because it's your primary residence. And what I was able to do, I was able to buy more and more expensive properties. So it's a really good way of jumping up the property ladder, and it means that you don't have to work for years and years and years saving really big deposits. So as well as investing, I've been living quite a frugal life, I would say. I don't spend a lot of money on stuff. I always buy second-hand cars that are fairly old, as long as they've got they're in clean condition, they've got a really good service history, and they're a fair price. I prefer to buy old cars, and what I do is when I buy a car, I just get it serviced regularly, and I tend to keep cars until I get to the point where the car just doesn't work anymore. It breaks down or whatever, and it becomes too costly to run. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues who change their car every 3 years. So what they're doing is they're going to work, and they're working 40 hours a week or whatever, or 50 hours a week if you include things like commuting and getting ready for work. And they're handing over an awful lot of their paycheck into car companies just to pay for fancy cars. And that's never made any sense to me, to be honest. I find that completely bizarre, to be honest, that you'd go and work, take the money from your employment, and then go and give it to a car company. It's just never made any sense, but that's just me. Also, I don't believe in having a really big mortgage as well. I know some people who have absolutely frightening mortgages. I don't even know how they make the payments, to be honest. So I'm talking about people who go out and buy these brand new build properties, and they're costing £400,000, and this is in the north of England where properties should be cheap. Again, that's another thing that I've never really been comfortable with, going out to work and working all week and getting paying a load of tax on your wages, and then handing over a gigantic chunk of that to a mortgage company. Whenever I bought property, I've always bought rundown property. A lot of people just don't want to put in the hard work to renovate a dilapidated property. A lot of people just want to go and buy something that's newly built where they can just move in and they can live in the property. And I get that, to be honest. I get that, I understand that people don't want to live around crap and they don't want to be doing DIY all the time, but it costs you an arm and a leg over your lifetime. So for me, it doesn't really make any sense to do that. All you have to do is learn some DIY skills, and most properties can be renovated quite cheaply if you do a lot of the work yourself. So another thing that's really helped is my current girlfriend. She's got exactly the same mindset as me. She bought a 1970s dilapidated house. It needed shed loads of work on it. My girlfriend's got very good DIY skills. I've taught her quite a lot over the years, and nowadays you can find everything on YouTube. YouTube's just so good for learning those DIY skills. So as I say, my girlfriend's got a very similar mindset to me. She's not a big spender. She's not interested in having a big flash car. She bought quite a dilapidated property, and we've been doing that up over the last few years, and it's in a really nice condition now. We've been doing most of the work ourselves, so it's been fairly cheap. My girlfriend's car is 14 years old, gets you from A to B, does the job. She always says to me, what's the point in having a new car every 3 years? She says, I'm going to work, and then I have to hand over a huge amount of my paycheck to a bank or a loans company or a car finance company. And she said it doesn't really make any sense. Why would I just not keep my current car until it stops working? So she's very much similar mindset to me. Financially as well, she also has the same mindset as me. She overpays her pensions, so she's building up some really big private pensions. She's got something like 18 months left on a mortgage, so the mortgage is nearly paid off. She's only just turned 40 years old, so that's pretty decent. That she should be mortgage free by the time she's 42. That's a huge millstone removed from around your neck. You can go to work, you can keep a big portion of your paycheck, and you're not handing that over to the bank anymore. She's not a big spender, exactly the same as me. She prefers to have some nice little holidays, a few times a year. That's really the only thing we spend money on is holidays, to be honest. She loves the holidays. I love my holidays as well. There's nothing better than going abroad in the winter and getting a bit of winter sunshine. I think that's a really helpful thing as well. If your partner has the same mindset as you, i.e. if you're a frugal person and your partner's a big spender, over time that's not really going to work out. There's going to be a lot of conflicts there, because you'll be trying to save your money and your partner's going to be blowing through that money as fast as you're saving it. Eventually you're going to be forced back to work. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. So back to retiring again. As I've already mentioned, I'm in a great position financially. I built up some pretty big private pensions, but I'm not able to get to those for another 7 or 8 years. So what I'm planning to do, I'm planning to live off the income from the investments I've built up over the last 25 years in my career. On top of that as well, my current job, I've been with my current company for 16 and a half years. Rather than going out and spending that redundancy payoff on a new car or a holiday of a lifetime or getting an extension on the house or getting a conservatory, something silly like that, and I'm going to put that into my investments. So I'm going to add that into my investment portfolios. I'm going to use that to generate even further incomes. An awful lot of people will get a redundancy check and they'll say, oh, I've got a load of money. A lot of people will just blow a redundancy check in 5 minutes like that, and that's not for me. I don't think that's a good idea. So I'd rather invest that money. And the thing is, if you don't do this, if you don't invest money long term, you're going to be working till you're in your 60s or even 70s. I know people that are still working in the 70s. If you get something like a redundancy payoff, it's worthwhile investing it, because if you go and blow that money, what's going to happen? You're going to have to go back to work as soon as you get made redundant, and that doesn't really make any sense to me. If someone gives you a huge pot of money behind you and you can use that to finance a long time off or even a retirement, it makes sense to do that instead. It makes sense not to touch the money, because if you spend all that money, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to go back to work, and you're going to have to go into that cycle again of, earning, owing your money out, spending it, and that doesn't make any sense from my point of view. So my current plan is this. Like I say, I've got about 2 weeks left in work before I get made redundant. I've had a long time to think about this. I've been thinking about this since June, since I was told I was getting made redundant. As I say, I've decided to retire, but I'm going to do it for a 6-month trial period just to see how I go. And the reason I've said 6 months is that I know people who've retired, and what's happened is they've become pretty bored pretty early on. So using an example, a good friend of mine, he got to his 50s, he had a business, he sold on the business, and he made a fortune selling on the business. It pretty much made him a millionaire. And then he said, you know what, I'm done, I'm going to retire. And he lasted about 3 months. And then he said, retirement's just too boring for me. So what happened? He ended up going back working again, and he was essentially doing the same thing that he was doing all his life. But he said, you know what, I enjoy it, and it gives me something to do. I really enjoy my job in software development, but I've got to the point now where I've worked for a number of big corporations, and although I enjoy the software development bit, I don't really enjoy the corporate stuff, all the endless meetings and the training courses, and the trying to climb the ladder for promotion, and the performance reviews and all that type of stuff. If I could go into a job and they could just leave me in a corner and I could just keep doing my stuff, just keep doing my software development and just knock stuff out all day long, I'd be quite happy doing that. Unfortunately, you've got to deal with all the corporate stuff as well. So I've decided to do the retirement thing for at least a 6-month trial period to give it a fair chance of success. I'm still working through the details of exactly what I'm going to do when I retire. So there is a possibility that I might get completely bored and I might decide to go back to work. But at the moment, I feel like this is the second time I've been made redundant. I've been doing the corporate stuff now for 25 years and I feel like I need a break from it. So at the very least, even if I retire now and it doesn't work out, I'll at least get a pretty long break from it, and that gives me some time to consider my options. So just to wrap up, guys, you're probably wondering why I'm filming this in the first place. So the reason I started this channel, I wanted to kind of document my retirement journey on video. I'm hoping it'll give people encouragement to retire early, maybe, and also provide an insight into what challenges I might face during retirement. I already watch a number of YouTube channels about early retirement, and what I absolutely love about those channels, I love the fact that those guys have got all this free time to pursue new hobbies and basically do whatever they want without having to answer to a boss and without having to worry about where the next paycheck is coming from. I've always been used to that steady paycheck, and it'll be quite interesting to see how I cope without having that regular paycheck coming in. So I'm going to keep filming these videos. If you'd like to join me on the journey, Please subscribe to the channel, give the like button a click as well, just to help the channel grow a little bit. So I'd really love to hear advice and comments from people who've already retired. Maybe drop me a comment and say, you know, what things have worked out for you if you've retired early, what things you found challenging, so I can kind of mentally start to prepare myself for those things. I'm at the point now with my corporate job where I haven't got any work coming in, I'm just winding down. I'm really excited about getting that money in the bank now, and I've been there 16 and a half years. I'm pretty much ready for the change. I'm going to try this retirement thing full time. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, look forward to that retirement. Again, don't forget to drop me a sub if you're interested in following my journey. Drop a comment below if you've got any good ideas for videos, and hit the like button, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Take it easy. Cheers.